All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another... Honey, that woman's in the yard again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the garage. Gerald here with you, of course, and it's time to get serious. This is not going to be a normal movie review that I usually give to you. It'll follow a similar structure, but I want to spend a large chunk of this video in discussing the ending, or the last 20 to 30 minutes or so, of the new blumhouse thriller horror film, The Woman in the Yard. Now, there has been a lot of discourse in the last few days since the film's release. I saw it yesterday as I'm recording, and when I went to see it, I didn't know anything about the discourse. I didn't know anything about the twist at the end of the film, the general through-line narrative payoff that we get in the last act of the film. I didn't know about any of that stuff. I saw it in real time, and I had a pretty strong reaction to it. So first of all, this is a Blumhouse movie. Did I mention that? So if for no other reason, even if it turns out I or anyone else hates this movie, which I know some people do because of the subject matter and the swerve that it takes, it's a Blumhouse movie that is creating engaging conversation online and on social media and YouTube. What year is it? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have timestamps below, and I'm gonna let you know on this video when I'm going to be diving into spoilers. I'm really actually making the video to do like a spoiler discussion versus like a normal review. But I am going to give you a quick 2 or 3 minute review that will be spoiler free. So if you would like to know my thoughts on the film without getting spoiled, that's what we're going to get into now. And then I will let you know, and like I said, there are timestamps below for the spoiler section where I'm going to dive into my interpretation, my explanation of the ending of this film, and also how I felt about it overall. A mysterious woman repeatedly appears in a family's front yard, often delivering chilling warnings and unsettling messages, leaving them to question her identity, motives, and the potential danger that she might pose. The Woman in the Yard is directed by a name that I'm literally going to butcher, but the director is Guillaume Collet-Serra. Did I get that right? Oh my God. And it stars Danielle Deadwyler in the lead role of Ramona. This is a very small cast, and it is a chamber piece for the most part, as it all takes place on the family's farmland and in their farmhouse that was recently purchased by Ramona and her recently deceased husband, leaving her a widow and also leaving her injured because the accident was a car crash that killed the husband and left her physically injured, but even more so emotionally devastated. She also has 2 young children that she has now been thrust into single motherhood, living in the farmhouse with her. Taylor, who is the teenage boy, I would say probably 14 or 15 years old, and a young daughter who's maybe 7 or 8 years old, Annie. Everything I've told you so far and everything I'm going to tell you in this section you have seen in the trailers or clips that have been released online, but essentially a ominous presence appears in their front yard. It is a woman dressed in all black, almost like funeral garb. Her face is covered. You've probably seen the images. It's even on the poster. And she's just sitting there in the yard. Also, where did she get this chair from? I think it came from the MCU announcement from the other day. So I'll just refer to her as the woman. But she's just sitting in the front yard. As the movie goes on, it's a pretty tight 90 minutes. As it goes on, she gets ever so closer to the home. She starts out kind of far away, like maybe a quarter mile away from the house, but it's a huge yard because they own all this farmland. But over the course of the film, she gets closer and closer and closer until she eventually is right outside the front door and front porch. So this movie, at least in the first 2/3 or so, is all vibes. It's all atmosphere. There's not a lot of scares. There are a couple kind of like, I won't say cheesy, but formulaic jump scares in the film that were pretty effective. There's great use of shadow work in the film because the woman has this eerie kind of power or thing that she can do where she can use her shadows to kind of go further in the boundary. And she actually uses these shadows to eventually get inside the home. And it's not her physical being, it's the shadow that she's portraying. Now, Ramona, played by Danielle Deadwyler, is constantly trying to kind of figure out what the woman's deal is, why she's there, what her connection to the woman may be or her family's. And all that kind of comes to fruition in the last 20 to 30 minutes of the film, which I'm going to be segueing to here in a second. But since it doesn't really reveal itself until that last act, we don't know either. And we're just kind of like, what's this lady's deal? Like, who dropped her off here? When is her Uber coming? Like, what the hell is going on? I don't want to give any of these things away either, but there are a few things that happen leading up to her getting inside the home, around the vicinity of the house, that are very creepy and scary. But again, we don't know why. We don't even see her do those things, as it is rated PG-13, which is most likely why those things are basically done off camera and left to the imagination of the viewer. All right, and then just to give you my general thoughts, because I can't really talk about anything else plot-wise without spoiling it, which we're going to get into here in a second. So I liked it. I liked it. The ending really, and I said this on my title card, fucked me up. It really did. And I'm going to tell you why in a minute, so hang tight. It is a very thought-provoking, I will say, but also a very disturbing climax in the film that I both kind of loathe and question the filmmaker's kind of motive in telling this story. But I also kind of admire it because it is a very courageous and off the beaten path conclusion to these types of tropey thriller / horror films, especially in the Blumhouse universe. I mean, you can look at any of the recent ones like Imaginary with the fucking teddy bear, Night Swim, which was one of my worst films of the year last year. They're on a run of traditionally, honestly, just not putting out a very good product. However, with The Woman in the Yard, it's not the greatest Blumhouse movie I've ever seen, and it's definitely not one of my favorite films of the last few years in the horror genre, but it does something that I don't know if any other Blumhouse movie has done, make you think and make you question how you feel about how the movie turns out, and also makes you question whether you know how the movie turns out. There is a high level of ambiguity, and I thought I knew what happened, and I do still stand firm in that. I'm going to tell you in a second. But I saw online a lot of people said one thing and half the other people said the other. And really, there's arguments for both. I'm not even going to say that the people that are seeing a different outcome than I see are wrong, because I get where that comes from too. It just is creepy, because if you lived in this secluded area out in the middle of nowhere in the country, and this woman in black just sat in your front yard with no explanation, you would be freaked out. It would be creepy. It's like when somebody comes to your door in the middle of the night at like midnight, which has happened to me before, by the way, and honestly, I don't know if I've recovered. So The Woman in the Yard, from me, is going to get a score out of 10 of a 7. I do recommend this film, but I'm going to give you a huge trigger warning, and I'm going to give you a huge spoiler warning as well, because we're about to dive into spoilers. And like I said, my video would normally end right here, but I have got to talk about the ending of this film. So this is your spoiler warning. If you have not seen Woman in the Yard, then get the hell out of here.
Do me a favor, please. Get out of here.
All right. So this is my interpretation. Danielle Deadwyler's character of Ramona. Let me start by saying throughout the film, there's different scenes and flashbacks and things that happen that are kind of sprinkled throughout to lay these little kind of crumbs for us to make the trail to the ending. And all of them are centered around kind of an alternate dimension that is a mirror of where they are. Think about the Upside Down in Stranger Things, or even in Jordan Peele's Us in the Funhouse, where something looks like it's happening, but it's actually happening somewhere else, and it just kind of mirrors what's happening in the real world. Of course, this has been done countless times, especially like in the science fiction realm of alternate dimensions. Hell, even the MCU has done it, and they won't stop doing it. How many dimensions are there now? The Woman in the Yard, the actual woman, is a manifestation or an alternate version of Ramona, of Danielle Deadwyler. She is a portion of her psyche that is somehow a physical manifestation. Now, the only explanation that I can really give, because there's huge plot holes here in terms of how she can be there physically. Now, mentally, you could explain it away, but the movie says it's not only part of the mental illness and her struggle with losing her husband, but she's also there physically because the other characters in the movie can see her, interact with her, have physical altercations with the woman, and I'm talking mostly about the two kids. So in order to explain that, the only thing I can think is that the physical version of her existed in that alternate mirror dimension. And somehow she escaped or was summoned out of that dimension into the literal world where Ramona is now grieving and trying to carry on by parenting her children here in the present day. So she shows up on the yard. Ramona goes out to talk to her, like, what the hell do you want? She says, look, somebody called me. I don't come here unless I'm called. She also says some things that no random person that wandered onto her yard would know, alluding to the death of her husband and that he's not going to be coming home, even though Ramona tries to scare her away by saying he is coming home from work. She knows some things about Ramona that, frankly, she really should not know. And Ramona knows there's something off about it, and she feels an eerie connection to the woman that she does not share with her kids. So she basically placates her children and says, look, she's just an old lady that wandered down here from the nursing home a couple miles up the road. She's going to go home. It's fine. By the way, they have no power. There's a power outage. So they don't have power. They can't charge their phones. They can't listen to the news. The car won't start. All kinds of shit. The dog doesn't even have food, and they can't make it to the store because the car won't start. So there's a lot of things that are kind of laid for us in the very, very beginning of the movie to show us, like, they're basically trapped on this island here at this farmhouse. The woman is, like I said, the manifestation of the psyche, the mental damage that Ramona's been going through. But the main representation for the woman, and I'm going to give you a trigger warning, and I kind of already have, but just please, this is sensitive subject matter. I honestly don't even know what I can say on YouTube. But the woman represents the suicidal tendencies of Ramona. We learn that Ramona wants to take her own life. In the very beginning of the film, she wakes up from this nightmare of losing her husband, and she's watching old videos of him crying, and she sits up on the edge of the bed, and she says, please give me the strength today. And, of course, the woman says in the trailer, today's the day. Meaning, you think she needs the strength to go on, to get out of bed, but she really wants the strength to end it and to leave this world. And we find out that's kind of what she meant in the beginning of the film. The woman, and that kind of iteration of her self-will, is there to help her do that. Basically to help her kill herself. Now, once that's all kind of laid out and the woman begins to speak and coalesce with Ramona, the two of them are basically talking, even though they're two versions of the same person from different dimensions, I guess. But they're talking to each other in her bedroom. She's showing her pictures of her kids, and the pictures kind of like do this holographic effect where it shows them in the future. The daughter is wearing a cap and gown like she graduated college. The son, I think, is like a doctor or veterinarian or something like that. So they're successful. 20 years from now, whatever, they've moved on. And where it gets really, really dicey for me, and I really don't know how I feel about it, is the filmmaker and the script basically say, and it's actually a line in the movie where the woman says, they're better off without you. You need to do this. You need to make it happen. They're going to be okay. Now, I'll just tell you, anybody that suffers from that mental illness or being suicidal, I hope I can say that on here, has felt that before. They feel that daily. So that is a triggering, dangerous narrative to lay out there in a pretty widely accessible, popular film. Because, like I said, I didn't know anything about this kind of plot twist. If I was suffering from that type of mental illness and I was in this movie with no prior knowledge and that story starts to play out, that could be a dangerous thing for thousands, if not more, people in this country that would maybe see this type of film as wanting to have an escape, but instead being reminded of these tragic tendencies that you have. I think it was a little careless in that way, frankly. So Ramona sends her kids away once she realizes her connection and the tie-in to the woman is essentially another version of her, an alter of her. She sends them away. She says, go to the neighbors. Now, there is a very crucial scene that happens a couple minutes here after the kids leave the farmland. Ramona gets a shotgun. It's been mentioned, by the way, that she purposely kept one bullet after throwing all the other ones away. Obviously, the reason she kept that bullet because one day she was going to use it for what I'm talking about here. She gets the gun, she gets the bullet and the shotgun, and she goes into the garage or shed outside. It's very disturbing the way that it's shot. It's very real. That's another reason why I'm worried about people that may suffer from this or depression in general. It could be a very, very tough thing to see. But she sits there, for all intents and purposes, like she's about to blow her head off. And she puts the shotgun like this. Like my microphone is the shotgun. And she holds it right here. I have a black shirt on, so you can't really tell. What am I doing? This is not a good prop. Okay? This is the shotgun. On the ground up to her chin here. And while that's happening, the woman is behind her, basically assisting her, putting her hands in place, putting the barrel in place, putting the finger on the trigger. And while she's sitting there contemplating doing it, crying, nervous, scared, we see the woman who is standing behind her kind of morph into a shadow once again, which she's been doing throughout the whole movie. And the shadow kind of merges and becomes one with Ramona and kind of dissipates into her body, and now they're together physically. At that point, we don't hear a gunshot. We don't see anything. We don't see blood on the ground, nothing, or on the walls, nothing that would insinuate that she actually took the shot. It just cuts away. We get kind of a creepy smile from Ramona. The kids come running up. Her kids. She greets them. You hear them in the distance going, "Mom, Mommy, Mom." They run to her, they embrace, they hug. The dog is there. I haven't talked about the dog, by the way. We're into spoilers here, but the dog is one of the kind of horrific things that happen in the first half of the movie, because he's barking at the woman, obviously, trying to protect the house. And the woman, we don't see it, it's off camera, but the woman kills the dog. We don't really know how or where the dog's body is or anything like that, but the dog is gone. The dog is thought to be dead. But the dog's back, barking, happy. The kids are there. They're embracing the mom. They're walking up to the house. This is in the last minute of the movie. They're walking back up to the house to go inside. As they're about to go in the front door, the power comes back on. Okay? They make jokes about watching movies, playing video games. They're happy the power's back on. They can, whatever. They go inside the house to shut the door. Very happy moment as a family. We see two things after that I think illustrate what I'm about to tell you for the ending of this film. We see the sign for the farm. There was a recurring theme when she would have her dreams, or when she would go into the mirror realm, if you will, to see her husband and a previous version of her husband, or she would have those memories of him or watch the videos on her phone. It was recurring that they were trying to come up with a name for the farm, and that her favorite flower was the iris. And we see a sign now. The farm has been named, which had not been mentioned other than just trying to figure it out. We didn't know this, but the sign is there, and it's called Iris Haven. The second thing is the camera kind of closes in on, after everybody goes in the house, it's an art piece that presumably Ramona had painted, because it's also alluded to that she is an artist who has kind of lost her artistic touch since the tragedy with her husband. It's a painting of the woman, but there's kind of two faces in it, which obviously is kind of what we've been dealing with thematically for the whole movie. The woman, and then I'm assuming Ramona, and they obviously look extremely similar because they're basically the same person. The interesting fact here is that it's signed by Ramona, but the word Ramona is backwards. And you could really technically say the art piece was backwards too, because the faces could be mirrored image of the faces, who knows. But the word Ramona is spelled backwards, or looks like a mirror image of holding a word up to a mirror. Now, to me, that symbolizes that she's dead, that she offed herself, and she's kind of either in limbo there, like purgatory or whatever, before the afterlife, if you will, or it's the split second, or the brief few seconds where your life flashes before your eyes. That's my interpretation, and that's how I walked away thinking about this. I said, oh, well, she did it. They didn't show it to us, thank God, for all the reasons I've mentioned so far of people that may suffer from depression. But she did it. She offed herself, and she's either about to go to the next life, whatever that is, or we're seeing right before she pulled the trigger. We're seeing that moment, that few seconds, like where they say your life flashes before your eyes. So she's like this, and she's about to, take care to do the thing, and probably closes her eyes, and that's what she sees. She sees the farm with the name and the flowers that she loves. She sees her family, the dog, happiness, right? I also think the painting was actually there, and that the painting was done in the mirror realm, which is why it's backwards, basically. You know, the logic there, I don't know. I mean, did she paint it when she went into the mirror realm? Because there was a few scenes where she actually went there, and she kind of went through a mirror, literally, and met with her husband from a past moment and reshared that moment with him. And there's other elements of mirror throughout the movie, like there's a scene where she's holding her daughter, who I said is like maybe 7 years old. She's holding her, kind of comforting her, like, nothing's going to hurt you, I'm going to take care of you. And then she glances over to a mirror in the room, and when she sees her reflection holding the little girl in the mirror, she stabs her in the back with a knife. But that didn't really happen. That was the mirror image of what was happening in her mind, I think. Obviously a troubled character who is dealing with mental illness and is suicidal and suffers from depression and etc. So I think all of those little bits and pieces added up for me that she did it. She offed herself. Now, I have seen an interpretation that is much more positive and much more hopeful, that she did not do it, and that we take that scene literally. So we take that scene like she decides not to do it, because there is a split second where she looks down and sees a stuffed animal, which I think is a penguin, that her daughter gives her when they leave. Her and her brother leave, because she says, I don't want you to be alone since we're leaving. And she gives her prized Lovey, her stuffed animal. And there's a split second before she's about to do it when she looks over and sees that penguin on the ground. And a couple seconds later is when we get that kind of creepy smile that I don't really know how to interpret, whether it was like a flush of happiness, like, oh, I don't have to do this, my kids need me, or whether it was like, okay, I'm glad that's the last thing I saw. Kadunk. You know, I don't know. I mean, that's open for interpretation. I just think it would be too rosy and too peachy, unicorns, rainbows, butterflies, to be like, oh, she's okay now, you know, with no therapy, no, presumably no medication, no, you know, she's still in the middle of this tragedy. Not only that, kind of added on layers to it, dealing with this part of her psyche, that's the woman in the film, that she's just like, okay now. And she goes to greet her kids, and then on top of that, you have logistical things that would be super cheesy if it was literal, like, oh, the power comes on, like, metaphorically, yeah, but like, oh, the power came back on right when we're walking in the house and we are reunited on our porch. And also, we didn't see the irises, and we didn't see the sign that they named the farm. You know, that's something that she imagined, that she wanted, that she desired. That's one of her, like, kind of visions for what she hopes the future is and what the afterlife is. So those things, if they were literal, then I would hate this movie. But I don't think they were literal. I think it was an abstract exercise in ambiguity. And I think it's awesome if you think it was literal. And honestly, you might be right. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying you're wrong. Nothing. I mean, I don't know. And that's actually why I like the movie and why I give it a positive score when I gave it a 7 on the first half of this video. I have already kind of mentioned it, and if you've watched this video this far, I'm assuming you've seen the movie. But if you haven't seen the film and you decided to watch my spoiler portion of this review, I would advise you to not see the movie unless it was in a controlled setting with people you love, and, you know, now that you kind of know the plot twist, maybe you would be okay. But if you suffer from depression, definitely if you've ever had those types of thoughts before, this is a movie that could be super triggering, super upsetting, especially for somebody like that. So please be smart, and I don't think Blumhouse and the filmmakers were really sensitive with the subject matter. Now, they left it up for interpretation, and they did have that level of ambiguity there, so they could very easily say, well, no, she didn't do it. You know, she's a survivor. She decided to overcome her depression and to carry on for her family. And that's, like I said, a very hopeful outcome, but it also seems like too perfect that that would not be real life. And I know this is a movie and it's not real life, but my interpretation, based on all the kind of clues that were given throughout the film, with the mirror world and backwards being a constant theme. The daughter always writes her R's backwards, which of course Ramona is an R, and we see that backwards R. Now I thought to myself, maybe the daughter did the painting in the mirror realm, or maybe the daughter did the painting in the real world and still writes her R's backwards, but then I realized the whole word Ramona was backwards. So that could have been a different interpretation if just the R had been backwards, because that was how the daughter was writing her R's at 7 years old. So then you could say, oh, well, the daughter did that painting based on the memory of her mom and the woman X number of years in the future. But you can't really say that because Ramona, the entire word, was backwards. So to me, that's a mirror realm situation. That's where that happened. So we're either seeing it in the mirror realm, which is why it's backwards, because when she visits her husband in the mirror realm too, by the way, his tattoo is backwards. They show the clock on the wall, which is back. The hands on the clock are backwards. So basically everything in that realm is a mirror image. Everything is literally backwards or flipped. So to me, that made it obvious. And I think Danielle Deadwyler did such a good job at selling the mental struggles that she was going through, that her character was going through, of Ramona. And that's why I believe what happened. I believe that's what would happen in a situation with a woman like that, dealing with what she was dealing with. So is it a bummer? Yes, it is. But why I said I'm kind of split on the kind of not liking the insensitivity of telling the story to certain communities that may be triggered by it, I, from a filmmaking standpoint, applaud it for the creativity and the balls to do it, because it is dark. It is a bleak, dark ending to a film. Now, it's not the first one to do it, but I gotta tell you, it might be the first Blumhouse movie to do it. A PG-13 Blumhouse thriller, you think you're gonna get some cheesy teddy bear, stalking a girl while she's taking a bath. That's not what this is. This is very intense, very real, and hits very, very close to home for probably a lot of people. Have you seen The Woman in the Yard? And I'm not talking about her. Did we call anybody yet about this lady? Let me know what you thought down below of The Woman in the Yard. Is my interpretation of the ending correct? What do you think the ending of the film is? I would love to know, because honestly, I love a thought-provoking twist or climax that really stays with me. And this is a movie that I liked it. I was okay on it. But that last 20 minutes really has sat with me in my brain. It's embedded itself to the point where I wanted to make this video, something I've really never done on this channel, discussing beyond my just general review of the film. I did give it a 7 out of 10 as a reminder for you guys, and I do recommend it with that asterisk of being careful based on the subject matter. Let me know what you thought down below, and let me know what you thought of my interpretation of the ending of The Woman in the Yard. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys out here next time in the garage.